Okay, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for our fourth webinar from the World Federation of Occupational Therapists. I'm Samantha Shan and I'm the president, and I'm delighted to chair this webinar and really do thank you for your engagement here. So today's webinar is on workforce management and retention. And we have some wonderful speakers lined up for you. We have our workforce strategy project lead, Tiago, speaking to us about the strategy development from WFOT. WFOT Executive Director Ritchard Ledgerd from talking about mental health and workforce initiatives. And then we have speakers from some of WFOT's member organisations from Chile, Sebastian Gallegos-Berrios, and Ailsa Leslie from OT Australia. So, not wanting to take time from our speakers, I will introduce them, and if you have any questions during the webinar, please do put them into the question and answer part of that. And if we've got time at the end, we'll try to do some questions, but they'll certainly get answered later on into the hub. And throughout the webinar, you'll be directed to where previous webinars are available to you online as well, and some of the questions and answers from previous sessions. So as we move forward, I'd like to welcome Tiago, who has led us in this whole strategy development for a number of years now, and we'll give everybody some more background to that. So Tiago, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Samantha, for the wonderful introduction. Yeah, we are taking this opportunity to frame the theme of today, the workforce management and retention, in the context of the workforce strategy we were developing. And this is going to be the opportunity for doing this. So the context of this small part of this presentation, it's going to be on human resources management at the service level, but also recruitment and retention related to rural and underserved practice areas, which are in need for improvements of this recruitment and retention. So starting with the first part, with the human resources management, actually in our strategy, and this is a figure that highlights the 7 key strategic directions. We have 2 of them that address these 2 components, or these 2 contents that we address first. So this number 5 are more related with the service management, the service level activity, and the number 4, the workforce distribution and access, were related more with the underserved practice areas or rural areas and so on. But also would like to highlight that the overall strategy is needed as a whole, and there are components of that would be relevant for management, recruitment, and so on. For example, in number 1, we would need to have workforce data to also understand some recruitment and retention issues as well. But we'll be focusing on this number 5 and 4 in this reversed order. So in this number 5, in the strategy itself, we highlight the problem and opportunity that leads us to the need to address this as a strategic issue. So essentially, occupational therapists benefit from management practices that promote their effective recruitment, retention, but also performance, job satisfaction, and resilience, such as focus on reduced rates of burnout and attrition. And this will be very important for a more productive workforce. And what are the weaknesses that led us to define this strategic direction? So there are just a few studies that examine the impact of service level human resources practices for the occupational therapy workforce. And you can ask, how do we know that there are just a few of those studies on this? So we did conduct, this was a 10-step process to develop this strategy. And one of those steps was conducting a scoping review of the occupational therapy workforce literature. And we published several findings of that literature, including the types of findings generated by that literature. And as you can see in this slide, and there are here some of the topics addressed. These were the least addressed. We had topics that were more addressed than this, but just 4 papers were focused on worldwide for the entire time, not just for a year. Were focused on human resources management, on recruitment issues, on leadership issues or workload, and just 2 of them were focused on salary levels as one of the issues that may affect, of course, recruitment, retention, and management. So just a few studies have addressed these topics. So what would be the long-term goals within that strategic direction, as stated in the strategy? So we would like to see you to observe long-term human resources and management strengthening programs aimed at improving the performance, job satisfaction, recruitment and retention, and resilience of the occupational therapy workforce, and to see those programs being systematically delivered. And in a way, towards, or the short-term goals towards those long-term goals, we would like to monitor and observe whether there have been programs, educational, continuing education, or certification that have been initiated or strengthened for developing or assurance the development of occupational therapy management and human resources management competencies. So we'll be happy to observe progress within these directions. And some of the actions or specific actions that we recommended in our strategy to address this aim are here displayed. For example, not reading all of them, but for example, we are focused on evaluating human resources practices and competencies levels with more studies on that, with the use of standardized behavioral and observable workforce outcomes for assessing the impact of human resources management practices. For example, we have noted in our literature reviews that there were a lot of studies measuring the intention of OTs to leave practice, but at an intentional level. So rarely there were used really retention or recruitment numbers other than intentions. So that would be a recommendation as well. And there was also the need to develop competencies and mechanisms such as organizational programs, collaboratives, peer learning networks, among other examples for helping occupational therapists that are increasingly acquiring managerial roles. And there are just a few examples among the literature reviewed on those programs or evaluating those programs, even at the organizational level. So we wanted to see a little bit more of that. On the second topic today, which was about the rural and underserved practice areas, this is more about not service level management, it's about more regional or national policy level, but essentially rural populations are the ones that have more difficulties to be served or to be recruiting qualified professionals, including occupational therapists, to serve those areas. So this is an issue that we might allude to when assessing or improving recruitment and retention. And there are difficulties to fill occupational therapy vacancies in some practice areas, in particular mental health in some contexts, not in all contexts worldwide, but in some contexts. And there was also some work that the WFOT has been doing with this regard. We'll see that a little bit later. And short-term goals for this aim would be on the development of implementation workforce strengthening measures, such as recruitment or retention packages, professional developing programs for improving the equitable access to occupational therapy, either by populations in underserved areas or by populations with, for example, mental health needs. And as I was mentioning, the WFOT is within that line of the inequitably underserved practice areas, was conducting a survey on the facilitators and barriers for the education, practice, and research in this area, which was recently published, coming to some results on that. And in the next presentation, we'll see a little bit more about that, including we are planning to develop a brief synthesizing the results of that strategy. This is just one example of one activity that the WFOT was developing with this regard. But essentially, this strategy is not only for what the WFOT is going to do, is also for every stakeholder and every agent and what they can do with this within this realm to improve or to strengthen the occupational therapy workforce with a management and recruitment perspective. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tiago. That's really useful just to give us some background of where we've come from. And I think really just showing us how all those sections of the workforce strategy fit together, as well as what we're focusing on here today. And some really important messages about, actually looking at impact and how we look at equitable access for occupational therapy. So thank you. And thank you, Tiago, for really leading us through this whole workforce strategy project. Your leadership's been really valuable. So thank you. And you were starting to talk to us about mental health and some of the work that WFOT has been doing there. So I'd now like to ask Ritchard Ledgerd, WFOT Executive Director, to talk to us about WFOT's mental health workforce initiatives. Thanks, Ritchard.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's a pleasure, and it's great to see so many of you here to listen to this important work that we're doing. As Tiago mentioned, the Global Workforce Strategy outlines several strategic directions that WFOT is advancing through targeted initiatives. One of these focuses on the mental health workforce and the factors influencing attraction, retention, and sustainability. Recognizing that mental health remains a significant area of unmet need within the profession, WFOT developed a global survey to better understand the key gaps, regional variations, and priorities for action. In this presentation, I'll share some selected examples from the survey that illustrate the factors affecting workforce retention and management in mental health. The findings will inform WFOT's ongoing policy development and strategic action to build a responsive, skilled, and sustainable workforce worldwide. WFOT collects demographic data from its member organisations every 2 years, and we've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and it provides useful information about the profession, including workforce shortages. You can access the Human Resources Project from the WFOT website if you want to explore the details. The project showing a growing trend of member organisations who are reporting shortages with the mental health workforce. Most recently, it was nearly 60% of organisations that reported this issue. As Tiago mentioned, one of the most significant themes that emerged from the workforce research scoping review was the mental health workforce. Studies from multiple countries, particularly Australia, Canada, and Sweden, revealed consistent challenges. Occupational therapists in mental health settings reported high levels of stress, workload, and limited recognition, which in turn was leading to burnout and strong intentions to leave the profession. In addition, recruitment into mental health roles was difficult. In some regions, over 70% of employers stated that vacancies were hard to fill. The main reasons included resource constraints, unclear professional roles, and limited visibility of occupational therapy within mental health services. Some initiatives, such as innovative fieldwork placements and continuing professional development, showed the potential to improve attraction and retention. But many of the studies and the overall evidence in that was limited, because it's important to note that many of the research studies were descriptive rather than evaluative, leaving important knowledge gaps and the need for more research to be undertaken. The review concluded that we need coordinated, ongoing, and comparative international research to identify what works in supporting and sustaining the mental health workforce. This evidence will be vital for informing future workforce policy and strengthening services worldwide. So we conducted an online survey that was available in 4 languages and distributed through WFOT media channels and member organisations. It collected responses in 3 domains: practice, education, and research. Respondents were directed to a particular domain depending on how they answered a question about their primary area of practice at the start of the survey. The survey attracted over 1,300 responses, 69% from high-income countries, 59% of responses were in English, 21 in Spanish, and the remainder split between French and German. The majority of respondents were from practice, followed by education at 12% and research at 5%. So for practice respondents, we wanted to know key factors that shape how occupational therapists deliver services in mental health settings. We asked people to reflect on 9 areas that can influence their practice. Each factor was rated on a 5-point scale, from highly positive to highly negative impact, with space for respondents to indicate if a factor didn't apply in their context. By gathering these perspectives across multiple languages and regions, the study provided valuable insight into the realities of occupational therapy practice in mental health globally. So from the 9-factor survey, screening and referral processes and education and preparation for mental health practice were frequently identified as facilitators of effective occupational therapy service delivery. These findings suggest that well-structured referral pathways and strong professional preparation can enhance access to and improve the quality of occupational therapy services in mental health. Conversely, waiting times, service funding, and therapist availability were the most frequently cited barriers, reflecting ongoing structural and resource-related challenges. The responses showed very little variation across different respondent groups or country contexts, highlighting the global relevance of these issues. Strengthening referral and screening processes can help improve access to occupational therapy, but this needs to be supported by enough funding, workforce capacity, and efforts to make mental health careers more appealing. Without these supports, growing demand will continue to outpace services and increase pressure on the system. So from the education respondents, we asked people to rate 9 key factors, which you can see on the screen, influencing mental health education as either facilitators or barriers. Again, each factor was ranked on a 5-point scale ranging from highly positive to highly negative impact. The analysis showed that education standards and student interest were major factors supporting mental health occupational therapy education, both in high-income countries and low and middle-income countries. Faculty expertise also stood out as a key influence. It was a strong enabler when available, but a major barrier when lacking. In high-income countries, the main barriers included regulatory challenges, limited recognition of occupational therapy's role in mental health, too few supervised or fieldwork placements, and low workforce demand. Meanwhile, educators in low and middle-income countries often pointed to shortages of teaching resources and limited access to practice evidence as their biggest challenges. And from the occupational therapy research respondents, we asked them to rate 11 factors in influencing research for people with mental health needs as either facilitators or barriers. Again, each factor was rated on a 5-point scale from highly positive to highly negative impact. The analysis showed that motivation, interest, and strong research skills were the biggest enablers for conducting research in mental health. These factors really highlight how personal commitment and research competence drive engagement and productivity in this area. On the other hand, lack of time and limited research funding were the main barriers identified. So even with high motivation and expertise, ongoing challenges around workload and financial support continue to hold back progress and long-term sustainability. So I've only shared a selection of findings that highlight some of the barriers and enablers that shape practice, education and research within the occupational therapy mental health workforce. More detailed analysis can be found in the publications produced so far. However, it's clear that further research is needed, particularly with stronger data and contextually relevant evidence. Workforce competency, engagement, retention, and diversity are key. It's not just about numbers, but ensuring that occupational therapists are well trained, supported, and able to work in mental health settings with effectiveness and professional satisfaction. Looking ahead, the next step will be a focus group discussions with the WFOT General Assembly in February 2026. This will give member organisations a chance to reflect on the findings and share their regional perspectives. The insights gathered will help shape how the global workforce strategy is put into action, guiding priorities for advocacy and implementation. Through this process, WFOT aims to strengthen the visibility and impact of occupational therapy and mental health, ensuring the profession continues to play a key role in meeting global mental health needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritchard. And again, I think you're really highlighting some very important points here. As occupational therapists, I think we've all known, that mental health is an under-resourced service setting, but to actually see some figures and some data and research behind that, gives us amplifies our voice behind that. And looking forward to seeing where the next steps develop around that with a global strategy, but also where some of our member organisations start to take that work as well, because it's very clear that action needs to be taken through education, practice and research. And I think that leads us on nicely from looking at this global perspective of some of the workforce retention strategies is to look at some of WFOT's member organisations and some of the work that's been happening more locally. And we'll start with some perceptions and reflections from Chile. And I'd like to welcome Sebastian. Sebastian is the WFOT delegate for the Chile Association. And Sebastian, please share with us your insights from the work that you've been doing with your colleagues in Chile.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for your invitation. I'm Sebastian Gallegos-Berrios from Chile. Today I will speak on behalf of the Call to Chile, is our national association and part of the Chilean World Federation delegation with Vivian and Leonardo. I will share the Chilean experiences about how to want to know about what is the currently picture about the OT workforce data and how it's aligned with the World Federation strategy direction. So to give some context, we are gonna talk about the context of Chile, the team who is working on this, and the national survey experience. The main objective of this project is to create a consistent picture how many OTs we have in Chile, where they are, under what condition they are working now. So Chile is a beautiful country. The Chilean population is about 19.5 million people. It's the seventh country in the ranking of 20 countries in Latin America. Some information about the general population is that more than 40% of the population lives in the capital, in Santiago, in the middle of this long country. And what was the red flag for us to start this project? In the last, we started this project 10 years ago, and we are following the data using the the web page of the Ministry of Health. And OT in Chile has a very fast growth from 3.4 thousand registered occupational therapists in 2016, and now this year we are more than 20.5 thousand OT. So the increasing rate in 10 years is 5 times. So that is something that we have to consider to study. Some context about Chile. The first program was created in 1963. From 1995, we in Chile we create the bachelor degree. As I mentioned before, we are more than 20,000 OT registered in the country, and there are more than 14,000 OT students enrolled in more than 70 university programs. And just 32 programs of these 70 are recognized and have the recognition of WFOT now. The gap, what are the problem? The distribution, we don't know where are we working. So we know that we have a strong concentration in Santiago, in the metropolitan area. The rural or remote area, we don't know what is really happening. The condition, we have a lot, we know that we have a very temporary contract. Multiple people have multiple jobs, and the income are very variable. There's a huge variability on that. And we don't know what is happening. What happened with the satisfaction of the people? They are happy working on that. And about that region, that is a huge problem in Latin American countries and in Chile. So we want to know about the harassment and psychosocial risk, about where we're working at. So there are a lot of issues that are invisible without a better data. The core focus is about the strategy direction number 1, the workforce data. We want to have a trustful information. We want to have a very specific data and integrate sources about official register, national surveys, and the academia to know and to discover the whole picture. So we create a team, and this team is very they have different members from along the country, from Santiago to Puerto Montt. So I acknowledge this great team who is working on this. We have the support of the Chilean Association and the University of Chile who is working on this. What are the experience? We have the official register of the Ministry of Health, and in 2023 we did the first natural survey, and we get more than 1,500 responses. So we have the general picture of Chile, but we want to be more specific about what happened with the condition. And now we have the result, and we want to present it in the work conference next year in Thailand. And now we are working in the national survey with students, so that is currently open. The domains of this survey have 4 specific aspects: the job satisfaction, the workforce distribution, the psychosocial safety, and include some question about harassment in the workplace and sexual abuse and the employment condition. How we created a draft with the try to respond to answer the research question. We have the statistical validation with experts in different disciplines. The ethics was get at the University of Chile. All the information is completely anonymous. The way that we get the information, the strategy is a snowball, and we get the distribution was through social media, and the software that we used was Redcap. This survey was open from August to December last year. What that we want to get, what's the potential information. We are working on the National Workforce dashboard, and we want to update this information annually. We want to have a OT indicator about the health of the workforce register. We want to create a standard of definition. And obviously we want to monitoring, doing the research, work on the advocacy and the develop of this information. The information of this data will help you to have technical and ethical advance in the equity and quality of care of the people who is working. So thank you for your time. This information, I acknowledge the Chilean Association to be present this survey, and we are ready to collaborate, share tools, and learn about your experience to keep build a strong OT workforce data. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. And I think you've again showed us sort of like the importance of taking sort of, a methodical way of looking at this. We know lots of things, and we make some assumptions. And I think you're quite right in sort of like a lot of these invisible factors that we know affect sort of retention and recruitment, but how do we make them more visible? And it's through sort of like the methods that you've taken in Chile and the association of collecting that data and then putting it into research. And I look forward to the presentations that you mentioned in Thailand next year as well at the WFOT Congress. So thank you to you and your colleagues for all that work and for sharing that with us today. Just to remind people that are listening, thank you again for joining us. If you do have questions, then please do put them in the question and answer part of the thing. I know there are questions about translation, and we will answer that. Once these are uploaded to YouTube, the webinars, then you will have translation options at that point. Unfortunately for the webinars, we haven't been able to do that live, but on the uploads, there will be transcripts available. So next, I would like to go to our next speaker, and this is from OT Australia. And I would like to welcome Ailsa Leslie, who's going to talk to us about workforce management and retention in Australia. So thank you and welcome, Ailsa.
Thank you. So as Samantha said, my name's Ailsa Leslie. I'm an occupational therapist and head of professional practice at Occupational Therapy Australia. Occupational Therapy Australia, or OTA, is the professional association and peak representative body supporting our OTs nationally in Australia. We aim to protect, progress and empower the profession through education, advocacy and support. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a snapshot of our workforce development and retention strategy within the Australian context. To begin with, and in keeping with OTA's commitment to reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land that I join you from. I'm coming to you from Ledgerd, which is also known as Tasmania in Australia. These are the lands of the Palawa people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and I extend my respect to any First Nations people joining us today. I thought I would start by providing some context around the Australian occupational therapy workforce. So for perspective, Australia is a large landmass. We're similar in size to continental USA, though our population is much smaller at just over 27 million people. Approximately 10 million Australians live outside of our capital cities in areas that are classed as regional, rural or remote, including myself. I'm joining you from Tasmania, as I said, which is a island below the mainland of Australia. So there's over 32,000 registered OTs in Australia working across government, non-government, private and community sectors. The Australian occupational therapy workforce has more than doubled in the past decade, and the employment opportunities for OTs have changed significantly, with now more than a quarter of our workforce working in private practice. The industry context in which our occupational therapists work has also undergone transformation, and this has been driven significantly by the development and implementation of a National Disability Insurance Scheme, or NDIS, which is a national funding scheme that's aimed at supporting Australians with disability to access the care and supports that they need. Industry change has also been related to expansions in community aged care, in mental health services reforms, and others. And as a result, traditional institutions like hospitals are no longer our primary employers, with an increasing population of the workforce now working in private practice and delivering services in the community. So demand for occupational therapists in Australia now exceeds supply. This generates some really strong employment opportunities, but it also is raising challenges regarding the quality and sustainability of some of these opportunities, particularly in the growing private practice sector. So in response to this context and in alignment with WFOT's global strategy, particularly Strategic Directions 1 and 2, OTA commissioned a workforce development project in 2023, which aimed to better understand the current challenges, risks, opportunities and perspectives of our workforce, and to formulate a workforce development plan in partnership with the profession. The project identified that while 75% of OTs indicated a high level of satisfaction in their work, they love being an OT, stressful workplaces, lack of support, excessive workload and burnout were common. These factors and others were also flagged as placing additional pressure on service delivery and on the development of our junior workforce. So we have enormous opportunities for occupational therapists as part of a growing profession in Australia, while we also face a number of issues that threaten career satisfaction, longevity and retention. So what are we doing to improve the situation? Our workforce development plan responds to current workforce issues and opportunities. The plan identifies 7 key priority areas with 3 key cross-cutting themes, excuse me, that you can see on the screen there. All actions are focused within OTA's scope and influence, and they'll be actioned over the next 3 to 5 years. Work to implement the actions in the plan commenced in 2024, and it's informed our advocacy and it's led to the development of a suite of resources to support the profession. Many of the actions outlined across our workforce development plan's priority areas align with WFOT strategic directions, particularly 4 and 5. I'm going to focus now on some examples that relate to Strategic Direction 5, highlighting how Occupational Therapy Australia is strengthening our professional competency through the development of targeted resources. My first example is Occupational Therapy Australia's development of a suite of capability frameworks that set out the capabilities, so knowledge, skills and values that are required by occupational therapists to ensure good practice when supporting individuals across life stages and in specific areas of practice. We have 6 capability frameworks available, and we have a 7th currently under development. The capabilities in the frameworks are described across the foundational, intermediate and senior practitioner level, allowing for articulation of career development. Some of our frameworks have been available for more than 12 months now, and we've been gathering feedback on how they're being used by the profession. We've heard from occupational therapists, employers, and some of our interprofessional colleagues, and the frameworks also help guide our own learning and development offerings. The capability frameworks ensure that OTs are equipped to work to their full scope in supportive environments, so strengthening the workforce and contributing to retention efforts. You can read more about the frameworks and access the frameworks themselves on the Occupational Therapy Australia website. We've also started building a suite of Practice Essentials e-learning modules that align with and essentially operationalise the capability frameworks. They provide a comprehensive learning experience, most with over 20 hours of learning in each set of modules, and they're aimed at the foundational practitioner level. The modules have been developed in collaboration with leading universities and subject matter experts, and they form part of a broader catalogue of continuing professional development that is offered by Occupational Therapy Australia to support that safe, effective practice and support career growth and retention across all stages of the occupational therapy career pathway. Another key resource that we've developed is the Professional Supervision Program. So we know effective supervision is essential for workforce development and retention. It fosters professional growth, supports reflective practice, and strengthens capability across the profession. The program includes an updated occupational therapy professional supervision framework that outlines standards for high-quality supervision of occupational therapists, along with tools and templates to guide good practice. It's complemented by an online professional supervision training course designed to build the skills and knowledge required of our occupational therapy professional supervisors. We've also invested in co-designing a community of practice with early career OTs. Some of them you can see on the screen here, and we're working with them to build resources that they think will help new graduates to navigate those first few years of practice. It's a really inspiring group. They have enormous energy and they're really passionate about contributing, about connecting with their peers, and supporting and learning from each other. And we've been really grateful to learn a lot from them as well. Additional resources supporting our early career workforce include targeted fact sheets, short courses, and an essential supports guide for early career OTs. So this guide outlines what to look for in a supportive workplace, and it highlights the proactive role that new graduates can play in shaping their own experience and building a rewarding, sustainable career. All of these resources are available on the Occupational Therapy Australia website. The data collected through our workforce development plan, along with the resources that we're developing, are enhancing OTA's advocacy efforts with government. This growing evidence base has strengthened our capacity to influence broader healthcare and workforce policy and planning, and it aligns with the WFOT strategic directions, particularly directions 6 and 7. So Occupational Therapy Australia's advocacy priorities focus on a range of areas directly impacting the OT workforce, from influencing funding reform, enabling occupational therapists to work to their full scope of practice, improving workforce conditions, and progressing other initiatives such as advocating for paid university student placements. We support our workforce with regular policy and advocacy forums that keep members informed and help them navigate workforce and sector challenges and changes. And we also meet with ministers, advisors, and other allied health peak bodies to present a strong, united voice for positive change. A recent example of our advocacy and awareness building was OTA's commissioning of a national survey examining how health conditions, injuries, or disabilities affect participation across Australia. The findings were presented in a participation gap report that we released on World OT Day. It highlighted the role that occupational therapists play and the need for occupational therapists, generating over 158 individual pieces of coverage with an estimated audience reach of 2.4 million people. We also shared the findings directly with government ministers and key portfolios and highlighted the systemic challenges as well as practical opportunities to draw on the strengths of the allied health workforce, particularly occupational therapists, to empower individuals to participate in meaningful everyday occupations. Ultimately, our goal is to address those issues raised by our workforce to improve job satisfaction, career longevity, and the effectiveness and profile of our profession. These issues won't be addressed overnight. They're impacted on many factors that are beyond our control as a peak body. However, we do believe we're laying the foundations that will ensure that our workforce is well positioned for long-term strength and sustainability. We look forward to evaluating the uptake and impact of the actions and the resources that we've developed as we reach the midpoint of implementation of our workforce development plan next year. I've really appreciated the opportunity to share this work with you today and to hear about how other countries are tackling their own workforce issues. So if you'd like to know more about our workforce development project and how we're putting it into action, I encourage you to visit the workforce development project section of OTA's website, or you can reach out to our team via the email address provided on this slide. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ailsa. It's really interesting. So much rich information there. And thank you for the QR code, because I think it'll be really useful for people to go back and peruse some of that information at their own pace. I think really interesting to hear that, you know, excellent that there's a real demand for occupational therapy in Australia, but you know that does bring its own challenges. And I think you've really highlighted the role that professional organisations really bring to helping bring workforce development together and that community of practice. So thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of our speakers for today. And I would like to thank everybody again for all of the information. I think I'll certainly need to go to the webinar again and revisit some of that. We do have a question in the chat, and I can't answer it fully, but Sebastian and Ailsa may be able to add. We've got sort of like, since when were the occupational therapy associations in Chile and Australia from? Well, I know that OT Australia was one of WFOT's founding members back in 1952, and Chile became a full member in 1980, but I think we've had occupational therapy in both countries longer than that. I don't know if Ailsa and Sebastian want to add to that.
Yes, from 1980, Chile in the WHO, but I don't have. I'm gonna look and I'm gonna type in the question and answer. But it's around 70s. Yes, I'm gonna found that exact number.
Thank you.
Like Sebastian, I'll confirm the exact year. But yeah, I'm similar to what you were saying, Samantha.
Yeah, I think I know you're from Romania, so I know both of our member organisations speaking today have been around a little bit longer than in Romania. But I think what we're seeing is, you know, despite, you know, the age of some of our associations, the workforce challenges are actually very similar across our high income, medium and low income resource settings around the world. So it's useful to sort of see how that develops. So thank you. And there's just one other question about who provides supervision in Australia. Is that regarding supervision for students, or I'm not...
I can answer either way. So yeah, professional supervision, which is occupational therapist to occupational therapist supervision in the workplace is provided by occupational therapists. Some of those occupational therapists may be employed in the same workplace, or you can also seek professional supervision external to your workplace. But supervisors do require a certain, or it's recommended that they have a certain level of experience in occupational therapy in general, and then specifically in those supervisory practices to ensure that supervision is high quality and really transformational and reflective in nature. The supervision learning program that we have does provide training for occupational therapists to transition into that space of being a supervisor.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think they were our open questions. And yes, Mirella says thank you as well. So that's great. I can't see any more questions, so I do encourage everybody that's joined today to go on to the hub that WFOT has for all of our webinars. You can see the link here, and that will take you to the previous webinars as well as today's, and there will be some translation options available in the transcripts with that as well. But before we close, I would like to thank all of our speakers again tonight. I think you've all given us some very valuable insights and some things that we maybe need to go away and think about, and the questions will keep coming. But what's really shown is that the WFOT global strategy is really important for us as a profession, but what's really important is how our member organisations, so the National Occupational Therapy Associations, take this on board as well and start to develop some of the data and actions required within a systematic way. So thank you to all of the project leads and project members within this. Thank you to all of our speakers tonight, but also through this set of webinars that we've been able to do. And I'd also like to give a very big thank you to the WFOT operations management team that have been behind this and very efficiently kept us in line with all of the presentations. So thank you to everybody that's enabled us come together today, and thank you for joining us.